All right, Josh, who is next up, sir?
Let's go ahead and head to Geneva, where John's on hold about his F-250. John, go ahead. You're on with Larry Perry.
Yeah, hey, Larry. I've got the Ford F-250 2003, and I've got a problem with the window, passenger side window, power window. It goes halfway down and then just slows down to nothing, and I put a new regulator in it, and it does the same thing. Check the voltage, and it drops to like 10 volts when it gets to that slow point. But I am at a loss. I can't figure this out.
Okay. Where are you taking the voltage test at? At the motor itself?
No, at the switch.
Okay. I don't know if that would be the best place to take it. Now, when the motor starts loading up, well, you shouldn't. I'm just trying to think of where
it shouldn't drop, right?
Yeah, well, you know what I would do, John? Do you have a fluke meter?
Yes.
Does it have an amp probe?
No.
Yeah. See, what I would do is I would use the fluke meter and I would use an amp probe. And what we really want to measure is the amount of amps that motor is pulling. It would be hard for me to determine just by looking at the voltages. Let's just say, for an example, when that thing gets to that little bit of a tight spot and all of a sudden it's pulling, 20, 25 amps, my gut feeling would be that there's something either in the motor or either the motor's pulling too many amps, and that's probably what I would come up with. Go ahead.
I did, it does the same with the old original regulator and the new one. Identical problems. I thought maybe it was a switch, so I replaced, I pulled the switch from one of the back doors and put it in, does the same thing. I have loosened the rails either side, the glides, and they don't seem to make a difference. I've and there's no adjustment for the regulator, right? It goes into a keyhole slot and locks in.
Yeah.
But when I loosened it, moved and let it kind of go to its spot, it went up and down fine. But then in that keyhole, it actually, it didn't. The window didn't seat properly. It's not in the right location.
When you replaced that regulator, did you replace the motor too?
Yes, it's a one-piece Dorman regulator with the motor.
Okay, all right. Listen, this is what you might have to do. I'm just, you've done everything that you can really do. And John, sometimes we run into this, and what we'll get is a resistance problem in the wiring. Especially the power wiring that's going into the door. And, every time them doors opens and closes, it's not a real sharp pinch, but those, you're flexing that whole wiring harness going into that door. And, this one's had about 20 years of practice. So, it gets to a point where, depending on how many wires, could have possibly broken or snapped or anything like that, could be what your problem is, where it actually goes from the pillar into the door itself.
Should I try another ground?
Well, I would do that, and I would probably run another power supply. Just run it from the battery, just a big long wire, right straight, I guess. Just power up the switch with it. And and then see what happens with another ground. Ground the door good. Make sure the motor's getting a good ground, and let's try that and see if something happens. See, the thing is, a lot of the power supply is usually common with most of the doors in the truck. If anything, we would probably be working with maybe an injured ground somewhere, something that's just got a real high resistance, and we're not just getting a good ground to that regulator. We're getting some, it sounds like, but we're just not getting as much as we should. But if we run a separate ground, just a big strong alligator clip, right straight to the motor, and then, make sure that we've got a good 12 volts there when we start off with, then I would try that and see what happens. And you're right, if you've replaced the motor and the regulator and you're having exactly the same problem, then we're dealing with some wiring issues. Yeah, it's just, and it's not that hard to fix. We run it, you run it right through the existing boot that's there and get it up in the cowl. And you probably have to take the kick panel off on the inside of the driver's side there and go ahead and feed it to the outside. It don't have to be pretty. You can just wire tie it into an existing wiring harness that's coming out of there, just to get it over there to get you some power in there, some straight power. But John, we run into this so much with these older vehicles nowadays. Folks are keeping a lot, especially trucks. People don't get rid of trucks, and what happens is the wiring harnesses start, giving us some issues, things like this, where the door actually opens and closes over the years, water, the elements, all this stuff. And a lot of times, a lot of folks don't realize this, but a lot of times the actual insulation on this wiring they use in automobiles are insulated with a vegetable-based plastic. And that stuff, when it gets to a certain age, that stuff can actually start deteriorating. And a lot of times you'll get wires that start rubbing against each other and everything else, especially stuff underneath the hood. It could be an absolute nightmare. But you go ahead and run those power, another power and a ground. Try that and give me a holler back. Let me know how it works out. And we hope that you being in Geneva, you're not having to fight those floods like a lot of folks are out there. We do wish them the best.
I'm with everybody else.
All right.
Yeah, I'm with the rest of the Geneva crowd. But thank you, Larry. That's some good advice.
Thank you.